How are you? Yeah, be good. Yeah. So this is kind of just before the panel gets started. We have a couple 40-plus matters of business. But before I start, do we have any first-time people who came here tonight? Great. One. Okay. Okay. Two. Okay. Well, because of that, I get to give you my quick overview of who we are. 40-plus started 1939 in New York City. There was executives that was the same position as everyone else looking for work. So a few of the heavyweights of the day came together. It was Thomas Watson from IBM, founder, J.C. Penney, Arthur Godfrey, and Norman Vincent Peale. And they just got together, volunteered, got this organization together. We are all volunteer-run organization. So they were, if you would, kind of got things off and running. 65 years ago, going on 66, the DC chapter started, 40-plus. So believe it or not, this organization's been in town for 65 years helping people 40-plus to find work. So, two offerings we have for the community is one is our Monday morning speakers, and usually once or 2 months we'll have these evening sessions with the panel and networking opportunities with some fine refreshments and hors d'oeuvres. So one of the key things also is we have a job search training class, or career transition skills, as we refer to it as. And one of those activities that you learn while you're in there, beyond just resume writing, cover letters, interviewing, networking, social media, is what we call some call it the elevator speech. At 40-plus, we call it the teammate. Tell us about yourself, right? So we have a graduate. There's no actually one. People who are graduates from the class, can you just raise your hand real quick? Yeah. Yeah.
From a long time ago.
That still counts.
20 years?
Absolutely. Yeah.
22 actually.
It's still going. All right.
Still unemployed.
Not because of 40-plus.
Who invited her?
And she's coming back in the new class. She's back. She's getting her skills honed again. So whenever someone graduates, we invite them to come back for, I want to call it bragging rights per se. And we ask them to do their Team A. After they do that, I'm warning you, I get to ring this bell. Gently, Brett.
It's a Navy bell.
Right, it's a Navy bell. Once it's used for minesweeping kind of thing, right? So it'll be kind of loud. But we'll do that, and then we'll introduce the panel, and we'll get the program rolling. So, Brett, if you would please tell us about yourself a little bit.
Okay. So I was way back mainly because I got a job. I actually applied to it before I took the class, but it took so long to sort things out, especially budget-wise. I got the call in the first week of the class. And I finished the class before I finished in processing, but that's another story. Anyway, so big part of the class is, putting together an elevator speech, and also during the interview, you got to have at least a 90-minute TMAY. So, 90 seconds, at least 90 seconds. Most of us had a problem keeping another 2 minutes. As
yeah, we were in the same class. So
yeah.
It was a good class, you can tell.
It was
right?
a lot of fun. We did it in this room right here anyway. So I haven't had a lot of opportunity to actually use this speech, but let me give it a try. Okay, so no clocks are running, right? Okay. Hello. Hello, my name is Brett Brooks. I am an experienced mechanical system engineer with a passion for developing new innovative products as well as improving existing products. Over the course of my career, I have successfully led several engineering projects for developing new innovative products at companies like Ford Motor Company and for improving existing products for customers like the U.S. Marine Corps. Won a few awards along the way, and I was promoted to the systems engineering team lead in my most recent position. However, although I'm proud of these accomplishments, I'm looking for a new career challenge. So my question to you is, do you know any employer contacts who would benefit from my experience and skills? The fun way to do it. And you can modify that intro or that exit however you need to. This is great. So thanks to my award, we have a ring-a-ding-ding tool here. And so,
Is that really from?
thank you.
Congratulations once again.
Thank you much.
All right.
Thanks for your time, everybody.
Oh, no, thank you.
Listen to these two experts. They know their stuff.
Congratulations.
Oh, we also forgot to tell you that the people who get the new jobs, we have job clubs that start afterwards, after the graduation of the class, to kind of get people networking. And it's that person's individual, whoever gets the first job, to take everyone out for happy hour. I mean, it's only right, right? I mean, you wait till they get the first paycheck, of course. You're not going to, put any heat on until then. Of course not.
It cleared.
It should have as a government, right?
I checked.
So we're very fortunate to have two returning speakers to 40 Plus, particularly when I bet most of the women know what tomorrow is in this room. What, the International Women's Day, perhaps? Yeah. Yeah.
It's Women's History Month.
The month. Okay. Tomorrow's like official recognition?
Tomorrow is International Women's Day.
Oh, but it's
The
women.
month of Women's History Month.
Ah, Women's History Month. Okay. All right. Very good. Following Black History Month. Great. Okay. Great. So they both have given Monday morning talks. They're both very popular speakers, and we felt this was good to bring them back tonight. I will not, however, take any credit for putting this nice panel together. My partner, my associate,
His twin.
my Regine. She's really the
Yeah.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
The mastermind.
Yeah, mastermind, I guess. Thank
Indeed.
you.
Yeah.
You guys, I'm going to be very casual about it because I'm going to have to read off the script. I, get nervous. So I'm going to introduce Jen the best way I can. She's fabulous. She's a LinkedIn expert. She tells me what to do. Nobody else does that but my mom. So, there we are. And she's a great teacher. And she's here tonight to tell you guys how to network. Not only to tell you how to, but to also show you how. Because basically a lot of the classes we have in here, I got recruited to help with 40 Plus, and I'm like, we need to jazz this up, people. We need to get people up and about. Yeah, jazz hands. Get people up and about and actually do, not just say, right? So Jen is a good one to be able to do that, right? Then we have Joan, who I met at a morning session. I like her style, and she may disagree with me, but I think we're a lot alike, her and I. She's very direct. No nonsense, but tons of fun. She knows what she's doing, right?
Sounds like you're so far.
Right? Am I good? Okay.
Yeah.
If you disagree, just jump up and say, Regine, you're absolutely wrong. I have no problem with that, because people tell me that all the time. But she works, and you help me with this, Joan. She works at GW, correct? Am I right?
No, not anymore.
Not anymore? Okay.
You want me, I'll do my elevator pitch for you.
Okay, why don't you do that? Okay.
Now?
Yeah, you can.
That's what I always say.
Who
I
knows
believe-
better than you do?
Exactly my point. She's gonna tell you she's not there
Yeah.
anymore.
No, but has anybody been to any of the workshops that I've done? Okay, yeah, you look familiar. So, do you remember how I do my elevator pitch?
I've
You don't?
heard it.
Okay, so I'm a real visual person, okay? So this is how I do it, and it's a big part of what I teach. Okay, is everybody, this is a three-legged stool, right? So this is what I do with clients. Basically, you can't change it, right? I am who I am. I've done what I've done. So the idea is, Joan Sherman, job search coach, right? So I'm a job search coach, and the three legs of the stool are basically to illustrate what makes me different, better, qualified. You don't have to hire me, okay? But what makes me different, better, and qualified. So the fact that I've done this, and I've done it a million times, and it's in back of me, sometimes when you say to somebody, there are three things that make me different, better, and qualified. So all of a sudden, everybody's saying, okay, what's one, what's two, what's three, right? So the first thing is, I did work at George Washington University's Career Center. After I finished my full-time career, I was there for a year, and worked with hundreds of students. I've got a lot of resources in my toolkit. The other thing that you need to know is I finished a career in sales. I was in the commercial insurance business, so I think the thing that makes me unique is what I refer to as, I understand the world of work. I have clients in every different kind of field, so I know kind of a little bit about everything, not a lot about anything maybe. Okay? And the third thing is a lot of the roles that I've played throughout my career. The most important that I think makes me a good coach is sales, because I teach people how to sell themselves. But I was a trainer. I know Jim, as a matter of fact. We were in Toastmasters Club together for many years. I hired people. I did some human resources work. I did organization development work. And it tells a story. So 1, 2, 3. So that's my elevator pitch.
Thank you.
Okay.
You did very nicely. Perfect. Thank you. I know what I'm good at, so thank you very much. Tonight we're doing networking for purpose. And Jen's LinkedIn coach, but she networks like a boss. Joan, same thing. She's been there, done that. She knows how to get her message across. So I put together an agenda. I'm not going to be a total, nut about it. But I know people have lives, and we want to get you guys good information, but also get you back, to whatever you need to be doing. So there's a couple of topics we're going to cover tonight. The first one, and they're both going to tell you their approach. And I hope they totally disagree, so then there'll be, food for thought, or two ways to do things.
We do talk about arm wrestling.
Exactly. So they don't even know what each other's going to say, which is perfect. So you guys take in everything, okay? So number one, we're going to ask each of them how they network. They'll talk for 7 minutes apiece on each of it, okay? I have a little timer. I'm not going to be totally rude about it, but I will keep you guys on track, okay? The next thing is, and I think it's all the same, I may be wrong, how do you network with different kinds of people? A variety of people, a 2-year-old, a 10-year-old, a CEO, whatever, So maybe there's a different way to do that for everybody. I don't know. So they will tell you how they do that, okay? And then, remember I told you how I like to have things interactive? And I love this room because it seems more like a party in the other room. So I like that, we're working, but we're having fun too. And in the meantime, what's going to happen is they're going to show you how to network. So they're going to come out into the audience and then, do their thing and network with you guys. So be ready to be, on your best behavior, I guess, right? And don't be shy. I don't want anybody to be like, I'm not doing this because I'm going to remember you, so you have something next time. Okay? And then the best part, I believe, is good because I like to interact, and I like a little take home, So I hate cooking, but I like a little recipe. I'm an architect, so I'm all about programming and pieces for what I'm doing with the client. So same concept here. You can give us a recipe. They will show you or give you a recipe. So when you go out to network, you won't feel like a big dud. Okay? You'll know what to do. And then we're going to have questions from the audience. Okay? So it should flow really fast, I think. And if you guys, when you guys get tired, you can tell me to shut up. If you want to get out of here, that's fine too. Okay? But I think we're going to move fast enough that before you know it, you'll learn tons of stuff. Everybody will be happy. And then we'll be able to go home and have better tools to work with. Okay? Sounds good? Perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to start with, I guess, Jen, you get to go first this time, honey. So if you just want to tell us how you network, I'm going to put you on 7 minutes. If you stop earlier, that's fine too. the buzzer will ring and it will be Joan's turn, okay?
Sweet. I wrote 8 things, but I'll try to fit them into 7 minutes. Hi. Thank you for coming out. That is the first step of networking, is to show up. So I appreciate that. I want to share a couple of the frameworks that I use and thoughts that I think will help you. The first word I want to share is homunculus. Can you guys say homunculus? Homunculus. I know, right? I had to have my sister-in-law teach me that word. She's an English professor. In the world of networking, what that means is you don't want to be in all of the same networks with all of the same people. If you go to networking events and you see the same people all the time, that's not what we want to do. We want to identify networks that are different. And so one way to think about that could be you have a network of people in your industry, your peers, skills-based networks like associations or things like that. You might have a business network like chambers or business-focused networking groups, women's groups, etc. A third bucket to think about, and this is just a way to have diverse networking, because you can get burned out if you go to all of the same types of networking events too. Have a community-based network. Maybe it's a church organization, maybe it's a nonprofit, something you're passionate about. And then the fourth one is a fun network. So for me, that could be my ladies' night out, where we just go hang out, we do karaoke, we have wine, but we're out talking and discussing and catching up. So those are the 4 buckets I think of. You may have your own buckets, but I would encourage you, the way to be a valuable networker is to be spread across different groups. That's how I approach it. Because what I know is working is when I can say, oh, Joan, you need to know this person. They're over here, and I'm the connector. Because they're in different networks. So my value as a networker goes up a lot because I know different people. And most people, although I wouldn't describe myself this way, most people will describe me as a connector. I'm like, oh, I actually know someone in that space. Oh, I know someone in that space. I can help you and make an introduction. But that's because I have a diverse network. And I instinctually go to different things that really don't have a lot in common to be that connector. So as you're looking, try to find ones that are different. I also look at my networks once a year, and I figure out, do I need to stay in this network? And I ask a couple of questions. 1, am I adding value to the network? 2, am I getting value from the network? 3, does it give me energy? 4, does it take energy? And this is not the approach I always took, but recently, because time has gotten more valuable the older I get, for some reason, I'm very mindful of where am I spending my time. And am I actually helping? Am I getting value as well? So just something to think about. There may be networks where you know you're bringing value, but I tend to believe there's always the ability to give value and then something valuable from that. I like short sound bites. One of the things I always say is be interested and you'll be more interesting. And so when I go to networking events, I tend not to use a long elevator pitch. I might give them enough information to know who I am, but I really want to know more about that. And so I try to have, and this works if you're an introvert or extrovert, 4 to 5 questions in my back pocket that I can pull on and use. Hey, what are you excited about this week? Hey, what brings you to this event? Who do you know that's here? Who are you hoping to meet at this event? How can I help you with that? Think about questions that are interesting, right? That are authentic. You don't want to just come across inauthentic and like, Jen told me to ask these questions. Okay, gotcha. Be in the moment and be present with that person. It can be easy to get into a conversation and forget time, so it's important to respect their time too. And I always get a business card, and I try to write down when they're not looking what we talked about, so I remember, so I can tell them later, hey, I really enjoyed that conversation about the best Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. Thank you so much. I look forward to talking with you. If you need anything, please let me know. So just be mindful of follow-up. The hardest thing and the thing that most people fail at is either asking the questions, and if it's not that, it's following up, and they don't follow up. My last point would be, actually, let me share one other question. If you're talking with someone, I tend to recommend, whether it's LinkedIn and the person doesn't know, don't ask for a job. That is something people will immediately not want to help you with because it's asking them to do a lot and to go out on a limb, and it's a bit scary. So I tend to ask, hey, based on our conversation, who else do you think I should speak with here? Would you be open to talking for 10 or 15 minutes over coffee or a phone call so I can learn more about your industry? I'm really curious. I'm in transition and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do next. Nothing is wrong with saying that, but I would recommend not to ask for a job. Just my 2 cents. So the last thing I would say is that, this is number 7, set goals. Am I still at 7 minutes?
Yeah, you're amazing. You have like 1 minute left, honey.
The last one, the 7th one and the 7th one, is to set goals before you go to a networking event. So it's important to understand who's going to be there. If you can figure that out ahead of time. It's important to know who's putting on the event, what's special about it, what's important for you to know about the organization. That could be looking up news articles, could be looking on their social media feed, just go in with some intel. And then the goal specifically is set a goal for the number of people you want to meet. If you're an extrovert most of the time, like me, I will meet however many people. But there are moments where I want to be an introvert and I don't actually want to talk to that many people, but I still want to set a goal. So even if you're an introvert, meet 3 people. Pat yourself on the back, get on out of there. Because if you're trying to meet 20 people and you're running out of energy, that's not going to help anybody. So introverts in the room, which I imagine there are some, set that kind of a goal, and it's okay to leave, right? You just don't want to be there anymore out your welcome if you're running out of gas. Those are my thoughts.
Right on the money, thank you.
Money.
Your turn.
Okay. Yeah, well, I agree with a lot of what Jen is saying, and I'm very opinionated. Yeah, but I mean extrovert.
Here she's
Yeah.
like, yes, I am.
Right, right. I'm an extreme extrovert. If you can't tell, you tell right down. You know that about me. Right. So anyway, when I think about networking, I don't think as much about networking events. How many people have really gotten a lot of traction on a networking event? A lot of traction. Okay. Well, not a big show of hands. And when I'm talking about traction, I'm talking about what did it really lead to. I'm much more about the one-on-one stuff. I think it's more comfortable for introverts. I would venture to guess that a lot of people here are introverts, maybe not, but it's a lot more uncomfortable to go to networking events, and it's kind of terrifying. And even a networking event like this, you can be networking, but to a degree you're all doing the same thing, right? So I'm not saying that it's a bad idea. I'm saying that I think it's a lot more effective to identify just a few people that you know well, who you can tell your story to. Number one, it's good practice for interviewing, but more important, it's going to make you more comfortable. You're going to get a lot of practice. And that's really what I would prefer to do. So, think about that. I get most of my clients through referrals, so I get out a lot. I do a lot of public speaking. I get to an event early, like an event like this. I've gotten some good traction with networking events. How many people have seen my website? Okay. Raise your hand higher, please. Okay. All right, so one of the other things I think you need to do is look at somebody's website before you do go to a networking event, especially when you're going to be meeting with someone. I'm going to move off of networking events because you're going to have a much more thoughtful conversation. Why else? Why else is it important to do a little bit of research? You do it for interviews, I'm sure. Okay, but if you're going to be networking with someone, why would you do that? Right, you can establish some credibility.
Maximize your time, and maybe that it's not a good match, and you
Right.
can tell right from the website.
Right. You can also be selective. But people are, I use a couple of different expressions. One of them is fail to plan, plan to fail. Okay, you're going to have a lot more, you're going to have a more thoughtful conversation. You're establishing some credibility. You did your homework. You're more comfortable. I mean, I can go on and on. I could make this more participatory, but I only have 7 minutes. So we'll do that later, and we're both going to hang out, later, and if you want to.
Happy hour.
Yeah, happy hour. Right. So the referral thing, I think, is a big piece. I'm not big on do you know anybody? Because I don't know how much does that work? How much does that work? Do you know anybody? This is what I want to do. Do you know anybody? Especially if somebody doesn't really know you, right? You have to, I think, be a lot more deliberate when you are meeting with somebody to help them figure out how to help you, okay? And the more that you can tell them, and I can tell you stories about that, but I don't really think that works. Frequently, and this is another thing if you've seen me speak, my clients put together a target list of maybe 10 or 15 organizations that they want to work for. So imagine if I would give you that list, right, with my name on it. I've got a toolkit here, I can show you all this stuff, but you've got your name on it, you've got your contact information on it, you show somebody a target list, and if you want, and the target list would be organizations that you've researched, right? Mm-hmm. And have a conversation. I'm big into props, so that way you can say these are companies that I'm really interested in. I've applied to 1 or 2 of these organizations. Do you know anybody there? I realize I'm probably putting you on a spot, so I've got a copy of it. Would you mind if I gave it to you? It's got my contact information on it. And would it be okay if I follow up with you next week on it? Okay, so it also gives you an opportunity to, following up is always something that I think people are uncomfortable with. So, what you're going to hear from me is I'm going to move around all over the place a little bit, but hopefully give you some ideas, some creative ideas. My background's in sales, so I've been selling for a long. I've been selling for a long time. It's in my blood, and hopefully you sell a product that you believe in, and that #1 product hopefully is you. So the elevator pitch. Another thing that I think is important when you're interacting with people. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? So you're going to learn a lot more by listening. Okay, you're going to have thoughtful questions because you've done your homework, you've prepared. I try to take notes whenever I can, especially if you're one-on-one with someone. The other thing about networking events versus meeting with people one-on-one, I encourage my clients, wow. All right, I'll give you one more. I encourage my clients to meet with a networking contact who they know at their office. At their office. Not over lunch, not at Starbucks where you can't get a table, it's noisy. People don't pay attention, they don't take it seriously, you can't hear. You go to somebody's office, and I can tell you more about that, but basically you never know who else you're going to meet. It's professional, it saves them time, and you can be a lot more flexible about time, right? I can come to your office at 8 o'clock in the morning. I can be there as early as 8 o'clock. So lots of good reasons to do that, okay? So those are just some ideas.
You guys are great.
Okay.
Next topic, variety of people. You're going to go first this time. Tell us if it matters, if you're talking to a boy or girl, CEO, janitor, I don't know. How do you network with a variety of different people?
Okay. Well, I naturally have a lot of curiosity about people. And I learned a long time ago that from a guy that I worked with, he was a very senior guy. I worked for this great private company with 35 working partners, and it was an open door policy. So I grew up in a culture and worked for this organization 22 years that, really was very, very formative for me. A great blessing. They don't exist anymore, they got bought. But anyway, I still have a lot of friends and colleagues from 20, 30 years ago. As a matter of fact, one guy that I'm working with now, a client, used to be a colleague of mine. Anyway, I learned a long time ago that everybody puts their pants on the same way. So I don't generally get really intimidated, by people, and I say hello to people that are out on the street looking. I say good morning, I say hello. people who are looking for, money on the street. I mean, I'm just kind of a naturally very friendly person. But I ask a lot of questions. I mean, to the point where I'm my father's daughter, and he was curious. I mean, some people would accuse him of interrogating people, So, but I try to ask a lot of thoughtful questions, and I pause to give people an opportunity, to really answer the question and think about the question. But I also try to do things that are memorable. What am I going to do to have somebody remember me? But I'm also a little quirky. I spoke to my mother earlier tonight. She reminds me that I'm a little wild and a little wacky. But that's me. I'm authentic. I'm comfortable with it. Maybe part of it is my age, and I don't know. I can get away with it, I guess. I always say that people either find me refreshing or obnoxious. So go for number one. Okay, yeah, right. But I just think you need to ask a lot of thoughtful questions and really take a genuine interest in people. I mean, it really doesn't matter. But at the same time, you have to be, I think, selective about who you think can help you. And people, does anybody have a question? I mean, that specifically about, how do you deal with different people? I mean, you have to be versatile, and I think I'm a pretty versatile person. Yes?
You just mentioned to do memorable things.
Right.
Give me an example, an example.
Okay. Yeah, it just happened at lunch today. I had lunch, a client of mine who I helped get a job took me out for lunch today. And this is a good networking thing too. The waiter was absolutely adorable, a young guy. And we had a long lunch, so things were kind of quieting down, and he was a really good waiter. So being a demonstrative, positive reinforcement person that I am, I started talking to him a little bit, and I'm also thinking, well, maybe he's a young man. And so I said, do you do this full time? He says, yes. I asked him a couple of questions. He really warmed up to the point where he was kind of leaning over our table. And I said, so Susan, my friend now, my client, my friend, he says, I said, what is your name? He tells him his name. And then Susan says, I'm Susan, and this is Joan. And it was a little noisy, and he couldn't understand. So I said to him, Juana la Cubana, right, which means Joan, in Spanish, it's, he was from Honduras. Okay, I didn't tell you that, yeah. He was from Honduras, okay? So anyway, he's gonna remember me, right? I mean, it's kind of a quirky little thing. I mean, frequently I'll tell people if I want them to remember me, and it's not necessarily networking, but it could be someone, somebody that I want to remember me for some reason or another. I can tell you a lot of different examples. And I'll tell people, Joan of Arc, okay? And if I say that, I call them back, and I remember, they remember me. I said, you met me, Joan of Arc. Boom. Just little things like that. But it's got to be authentic. So change your name to Joan. Any other questions?
No,
Yes.
Can you share with us, you said you were in sales.
Yeah.
And of course, we're selling ourselves when we're looking
Right.
for a job. Can you walk us through the normal sales cycle so that we understand what we should expect when we're trying to sell ourselves?
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
No, not really.
Not really, okay.
I mean, it's different. It's really different. You could take a sales course. They're all different.
What do you use?
Let's put it this way. I have a process, okay? I have a job search process. And I'm going to hand this out to you later. I do a couple of workshops. There's a series of them. The first one is called What I'm Doing Isn't Working. And then there's a follow-up called You're Not Ready to Network Until. So a recipe, Regine asked us to have a recipe, so I've got a handout for you, and really it's kind of a very abbreviated version of You're Not Ready to Network Until. If I have time, and if you'd like me to, I can very quickly show you the process. But the selling yourself thing, man, there are so many tricks of the trade. And you can start a job as a young person like I did, and they teach you a sales process, and then they teach you another sales process. But it's really just not that simple, really. It's really not. I could teach a course on it, the way it works for me, but it's not necessarily going to work for everybody else. But it's a good question. It's a good question. I'm not saying it's not a good question. It's just more of a complicated answer. It depends,
Thank you. Okay. Now it's your turn. Do you remember the question?
I
Phil?
do.
Okay.
No, they're different people.
Oh, perfect. Look at you.
I think it's important to practice being flexible, and Joan talked about that flexibility piece, being versatile. People are different, and you have to be, I would recommend you be very situationally aware. Some people like to be close. Some people don't. Some people don't. No, I'm just kidding. But it's important to pay attention to body language. It's important to get someone's name. Make sure you actually hear their name and say it 1 or 2 times in the conversation, and certainly at the end. People need to know, like I said earlier, be interested to be more interesting. I have some phrases I use to meet people where they're at. So I might say something like, telepathy is not a strategy. If you are in a job search, stop thinking about how awesome you are. You've actually got to practice communicating it. Telepathy is not a strategy. And most, my friends, my clients, they all can use that as a refrain. They say that, right? I'll say personal branding is not personal bragging. It's not. It's just being confident in what you can do. And so I think it's important to have those sound bites, whether it's Joan of Arc or whether it's a phrase, because people have ADD. We all have ADD. I don't care. We all do now with our phones. It's just happening. So we have a short attention span. And so it's important to be very mindful of brevity of phrase, but also brevity of conversation. How long are you speaking? Are you pausing? I think that's important, just to be present. A sales cycle, whatever that is in words that work for you, goes faster if you're authentic. And you're very genuine. Whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's in person, I don't want to feel like somebody's just shaking my hand to get a business card or sending me a connection request that's literally the same one they sent to the last 30 people. If you don't know something about me or send me a personalized LinkedIn request, which I know you're going to do later because you said you were, I'm not going to answer it, and I will not accept it unless I think you're genuinely interesting. And there just aren't that many people where on LinkedIn their LinkedIn profile is interesting. So I think it's very important to really pay attention to people. Most people just want to feel valued and want to be seen. Whether you're a CEO, whether you're 10. Now I do speak to my 9 and 12-year-old differently than I do a CEO, but I use a lot of the same tools and techniques. I do think it's important to practice. A lot of times people go to a networking event and things don't go the way they planned. If I think I'm going to have a hard conversation, or if I were practicing for an interview, I'm saying stuff out loud in my car, in the shower, whatever, to practice. I especially do that if I'm going to have a difficult conversation, which hopefully your networking events will not be difficult conversations. But if I know I need to give someone feedback, I'm practicing all the time. That's why you practice your TMAY. Because if you're not comfortable saying it, it's going to be really obvious. So conversation is supposed to be conversational, right? It needs to have a flow to it like a dance. And if you're comfortable asking questions and you're comfortable and you've practiced it with each other, with people you know, that will help you. If the first time you practice, just like an interview is in your first interview, you're in trouble, right? You really want to practice. And that's why I have those 4 or 5 questions in my back pocket, just in case the other person is not good at conversation either, just to ask them to get them speaking. Most people never get asked about themselves, and so when they do, they're like, oh, this is refreshing, right? That's why they start to be engaged. To me, good networking, whoever it's with, is all about getting to let the person know you, let them trust you. And so letting them know you, give them an interesting fact. I have a few about me, not that many, I'm not that exciting, but I have a couple, and I'll throw them out there, like, I was on American Idol. Well, that's not true. I auditioned for American Idol. Sometimes I exaggerated my.
Is that the way you do it?
American Idol.
I was on American Idol. I auditioned. You know, like capture their attention and then qualify.
On season 2, oh no, wait, audition first. But I try to find those common interests, right? What do you do outside of work? What's your favorite thing to do on the weekend? What do you recommend doing that's interesting around here? But figure out what people like and then talk to them about that. People generally never have time to talk about their passions or themselves, and so give them space to do that. If I can understand where someone's at in their journey, so I'll give an example. For people who don't like personal branding because they think that it makes them have to brag, that's when I'll say something like, a lot of people confuse personal branding with personal bragging, and they think if they get a better LinkedIn profile, they're just talking about themselves. I believe personal branding is 90% value you provide to other people. And all of a sudden it's like, I like that. Because you're meeting them where their assumptions are and where their appetite for that conversation is. If I start off telling someone, you gotta love, you gotta be on Twitter, most people will shut down. So also in a conversation, understand where they are, so you know how much information to give them, what information might be interesting or relevant to them. So I know it's a teeny bit more advanced and more nuanced. I think the number one thing to do though is just practice. Get out and practice. And you brought up a great, all of your points were great. The one that definitely resonated with me, which I did not speak to, I have networking events that have different cadences. So I have one that's every single week with the same people. The reason that matters speaks to what you were talking about, which is having relationships. I have some that are once a quarter, and it's not as much about the relationships, but we get to meet each other. So find a place where you're consistently seeing some people, because that is your marketing team. Other places are more about just expanding your reach. So it's quality and quantity, I guess is what I'm saying.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And this part here, you guys get ready, because this is the part where you come out in the audience. And
We can't stand back here.
No, everybody has to participate. If you want to stand up, maybe that's better, the whole class stands up, whatever. And you guys come out. I guess we might have going first this time. Joan's going first this time. So do you want to come out and pretend, even though you're against networking, I guess, but you do one-on-ones more.
Yeah, you know what, I was in a Toastmasters club with Jim, and there was this thing called Table Topics, remember Jim? And Table Topics is they throw out a question, and if you don't know how to answer it, you just do something else, right? Or you talk about something else. You talk about something else, so I don't want to do that.
Okay, so what do you want to do? Do you want to walk out here and talk to somebody? Do you want somebody to come to the table and pretend like you have a one-on-one at lunch?
Do you want to do that?
No.
She doesn't want to do it either. Hey, 2 against 1.
We're
I'm
rebellious.
sorry, you guys this is my house, you guys have to do what I tell you.
She's never going to invite me back again.
What I liked,
Isn't that funny?
what I liked about your
That's
idea.
exactly what I thought would happen. Isn't that funny? I thought you guys were like just going to go
I know,
out
we
and say like,
were scheming.
you were scheming, I can't believe that.
She was
Okay, well,
scheming.
maybe since I have no fear, I'll pretend.
Go ahead. You need
And then you guys
a little stage time.
Yeah, let me do
Go ahead.
that, okay? I can't believe you two. I understand why you're devastated.
So what I loved about your
Holy cow.
agenda item
Yes.
is
Wow.
one person wanted to introduce themselves, right? But I think it's so dependent, and networking is so in the moment and real time. I hate to force that exercise. So I don't know if you're, I like to offer alternatives. If we want people to ask questions, or what your thoughts are on.
We have the
I have an
half
idea.
hour. Like the last part is about questions. This was like 15 minutes. I mean, I can
So we can just take that out.
No, I have an idea.
What's the idea?
I have an
this is good.
idea.
We'll bring some-
So now this is going to kind of calm you down a little bit.
Okay.
All right.
This is good because
Jen,
nobody likes to network.
Jen and I never met before, right?
Okay. All right.
Good. You know, we schmoozed a little, right?
We chatted.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily need to do a role play with you, but maybe we can just talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely.
You know.
Okay.
So, you want me to?
Sure.
Okay. So, I mean, we just, I don't know, we kind of hit it off. We talked about, why were we here? What did we do? How are we connected to 40 plus? And we talked a little about some professional stuff. I mean, we found an opportunity to really zero in on some commonality. We talked about travel. I told her that she's really got the lipstick thing going. I don't. I'm really impressed.
I agree with that.
I just never, I could never do it.
And you were red too. I
Right.
agree.
Right. So I mean, we just kind of got to know each other a little bit. But I think the whole idea behind, and I'll let you comment on that too. I think the whole idea is people are generally more impressed with the questions that you ask than the statements that you make. It goes with the 2 ears and 1 mouth. Because people just like to talk about themselves. And I learned a lot more by not saying so much about myself, but she learned a lot about me too. I mean, we all like to talk about ourselves, but she talked about children. We talked about, I just got back from St. Petersburg, she's got family in Florida. So, we connected pretty fast and found a lot in common. And I consider you, Jen, to be a potential
We're gonna talk
networking,
more.
and get together again. We exchanged cards. We talked about LinkedIn, and she and I both agreed that you don't accept a LinkedIn invitation unless you know somebody. So we that's what we did. We know where we live. She lives in Oakton. She knows where I live. And we spent some time together. But I also tried to make it a point of getting to know some of the other people here too. So we got here early, right? That's a good thing to do. Get there early, especially if you're a little uncomfortable. And it was, I think, I'd like to think we're good at that. But, we just very naturally practiced it, and I like you.
I do
You're really hardcore. You're so savvy.
Okay.
We had a hardcore moment. Do you really want more? I was saying.
Right.
That's wonderful.
So we have 14 minutes here.
You do?
Yeah.
We're now,
You're welcome.
we're now partners.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Okay.
Well, and a lot of what we did was build on each other's comments, right? And so I was trying to think of what thing that's like, but it's like building something with Lego, so you hope you have something nice at the end that you appreciate. But as we were talking about travel, and she was talking about going to Cambodia, my cousin was adopted from Cambodia, we were talking about that. So it goes back to the know, like, and trust. In networking, when you need someone to help you find a job, it's very hard to ask someone who doesn't trust you and you don't have trust with them to help you with that. Right? That's why Joan's point about meet people you know in your inner circle and ask them for help, because you have the know, like, and trust factor. In a networking conversation or just out and about or whatever it is, at Thanksgiving, anywhere, I'll talk to anybody. You're trying to get to know each other. And in our process, we got to know each other. We got to like each other. And there's the beginnings of trust there. I certainly believe she has integrity, right? So I'm already sensing values. And so the questions we were going back were genuine. I genuinely was interested in where she's been and what we have in common. She knows I have tattoos. Most of you don't know. Some of you do, right? And
I don't know where.
Yeah, we don't like each other.
We didn't get that.
We didn't get that. The trust factor. It's just on my wrist. It's okay. That's not my own situation. So what I would say is, as you're in a conversation, think of it like building blocks. You might start here, but you might end up over here. And you're going back and forth, and you're adding pieces, and you're adding depth and dimension. So what was a two-dimensional flat interaction at first, you want it to become more. I think people are way more interesting than they give themselves credit for. But again, unless you're asking people questions, it's hard to pull that out of them. And oftentimes, especially if you're in job search or in sales, a lot of times the conversation is more about you than the other person, and that's where things totally fall flat. If you come across as desperate or needy, or you follow up every single day for 30 days, like there's a word for that, it's called stalking. And so, as much as you may really need a job, it's important to not let the other person you're talking to feel that tension and that stress, because that will make them not want to pick up the phone call.
Or the desperation.
They don't want that.
Yeah.
They don't want that baggage. People have enough stuff going on in life. So just be mindful, and before you go into networking, just take a deep breath. Whatever happens, happens. I just want to make some good connections, have some good conversation. That's it. If you go in and your bar is get a job at this networking event, you're going to be disappointed every single time, for the most part. So go in and just have a good time and be relaxed and really listen and ask lots of questions. I think that's what we did, and just find what's in what we have in common. It's a lot more than people think. You never know someone's story unless you ask, and that's the best way to get to know, like, and trust.
Yeah, and I don't think, I wanted to see a little bit more about, what you do and hear you, and you use a lot of big words, which I've learned some things anyway. Huh? Yeah, that first one. I wanted you to spell it up here.
I do actually know.
Yeah, no, but seriously, we have things to learn from each other. And I don't really think I had like a hidden agenda. I'm kind of checking you out. I got her card, and now that I've seen what she can do.
I read on your website.
Right, yeah, and I'm not, yeah, and I'm very careful about, we should get together, or, I've gotten her card, but at the same time, I'm still kind of in observation mode. So you don't necessarily have to think, every time I meet somebody, I got to connect with them on LinkedIn. You have to be, kind of selective, authentic, because our time is valuable. So give yourself a little time to think about it before you start to offer things. And if you do, you better do what you say.
Yeah.
You really better, you should do what you say. I had a conversation the other night with, is it Regine?
Regine.
Yeah, and we were talking about travel again, and she remembered something that I had said a long time ago. She and I actually have the same favorite. I did a safari years ago, and we were talking about our favorite animals, or I must have said something to you before.
You said it in the meeting, and I
Right.
was like, I didn't say anything. I remembered that you love wildebeest. And
Right,
so do I. And I was like, oh, cool.
right. So we were on the phone just the other night, and she mentioned a wildebeest, and I said, I've got a great picture of a wildebeest.
And she sent
And
it to
as
me.
soon as I got off the phone, I sent it to her.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I mean, there are times when I'm networking with people, and especially I think in your position, you're asking people to do you a favor, right, to meet with you, and people feel very uncomfortable doing that because you think, well, what am I going to be able to do for them? Well, it could be as simple as listening to something and offering to send them something, all right? But you better write it down and do it right when you get back. Because if you say you're going to do something, or maybe you don't even say you're going to do it, but you wrote it down, you say, you know what, it would be kind of nice, because it's nice to have something unique to follow up with, not just a thank you note. And it doesn't have to be buying somebody something. It's just, something that you said was important, and I think you'd like this, and I'm going to do it. And those little things make a real difference. These are all kind of the creative things, but it also illustrates that you've been listening, right? And you've had some commonality. So, these are just little things. I'm kind of talking off the cuff.
Yeah, but I'm going to add something to that, because when I told her, I remember she said that, I was like, oh my God, she's pretty cool. She knows about the wildebeest, and then she told me she hadn't had safari. She goes, of course I've had safari.
No, I didn't.
Like everybody has. And I said, I saw the wildebeest in 3D at the Natural History Museum. And she goes, yeah, I saw the same one.
Right.
It was
Migration.
awesome. Yeah, and we had this whole conversation, so that's what I'm saying. So, we'll go on safari together someday. Promise.
That's the best trip I ever took.
Right?
Well, I was at a lunch Monday, and we were having a conversation about bucket lists. And it was a great conversation. And later that day, a friend of mine did a podcast with another friend of mine, and it was about how to rethink a bucket list. And it was posted on LinkedIn, because I like LinkedIn. I tagged my friend that I had lunch with, and I said, you have got to listen to this podcast. It plays right into the conversation we were having about bucket lists. You're going to love it, right? And again, it showed that I was listening, and it gave me an opportunity to recognize other people, the person on the podcast, the person who did the podcast, Mark Silverman, and it gave me a chance to add value So the other thing I would say, and I have the same conversation with college students looking for internships, please don't assume that you don't have anything of value to offer. Just because you're looking for a job doesn't mean you don't have insight or information, or haven't read a book that they would find useful, or haven't read a TED Talk, or haven't read an article, or something like that. You can always add or offer something of value as you're listening and as a follow-up. And even if you don't end the conversation, it's a great way to follow up a week or two later to just ping them. Hey, I just saw this article come up in the New York Times, made me think of you. Just wanted to send it to you, right? I'm not saying you need to send every person you meet a book that you think they would like from Amazon. But doing little things like that, it's the small things that really, really, really matter.
So I need to ask you a question. Fail to plan, plan to fail. This is my own paper towel. Can you tell us the name, because I'm curious.
Yeah.
Okay, that way you're not going to get 16 emails. What was the name of the podcast? What's
The name of the podcast
By
is
Silverman.
Mark Silverman, and it's called Mastering Midlife.
Mastering Midlife.
It's a great podcast. He just launched it in January. You can find him on LinkedIn, Mark J. Silverman. His website is markjsilverman.com. And the podcast is called Mastering Midlife.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's awesome. I think a 12-minute podcast, super easy to listen. All of his podcasts are about in your 40s and 50s when you're going through change and you're going through life, and it's hard. These are the things we should be talking about that we're not. And Mark and I auditioned for a TED Talk, and so did Amit Khan, who was the person that shared the bucket list. He's like 30. And he was like, here's the new way to think about a bucket list. I'm like, you're 30. How do you know this? Right? You're so wise and you're so young. But he did. So again, regardless of your age, you have something to offer that's valuable. So please don't think that you don't. And if you need help brainstorming what that might be, and people who go to my workshops know this, coffee, chocolate, and wine, I totally will sit down and talk about this. As long as it's coffee, chocolate, and or wine. It could be free. But those are things that people remember, right? So come armed with your own interesting facts, so you're also interesting to the person you're speaking with. Some people forget that just because you think you don't know something doesn't mean it's actually not valuable. You may think, well, that's so easy, of course everybody knows that. But other people may not have any idea.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to say, I did my pitch, and I think it's all about dialogue. So, a lot of people get up and they, it's 90 seconds, it's 60 seconds, whatever it is. I try to engage people in my pitch. Like I could show you that I've got these three-legged stools in here, okay, for different people. But I try to engage people in, I can tell you more about that, or would you like to know about that? I worked at GW's Career Center, and I had this one student who was really amazing. Would you like to hear about it? So to engage in a little bit of conversation versus, being on stage and saying your lines. Maybe some of this is in disagreement with maybe some of the things you hear elsewhere. But these are things that work for me, and I think they should work for people because you're having a conversation, and that's what people are going to remember. There are a lot of ways to do it. On my three-legged stool, it's because sometimes you pull it out, right? Maybe there are certain situations where it is effective, and it says sales, trainer, Toastmaster, manager, leader, team leader, whatever it may be. Well, it's like I don't know if it drives you crazy, but sometimes when I see somebody do a PowerPoint presentation and they read every single thing, right? Well, have a little conversation about it, or stop and let somebody look at it, right? And then say, I was in sales, but I can tell you more about what I did in training. Is that of interest to you, right? And that way, number one, you're asking permission, right? People love it when you ask permission. But you have to be authentic about it. You can't just keep asking permission if it's not right for you. But these are really some of the techniques. It's all about really forming, to a degree, forming a relationship. Okay, I mean, I've had some people say, "Oh, every time I network with someone, I want to form a relationship." Well, I mean, you're not dating. You want to form a relationship, but maybe you don't want to form a relationship, right? So again, it's being selective, but it's digging enough and having enough dialogue and using your questioning and active listening skills to dig deep to see if you want to really take this further. It is like dating. It is like dating.
You should also have an exit strategy. If you're in a conversation and it keeps going and going, maybe it's not your fault, maybe it is,
Right.
you should have a way to get out of the conversation.
The other thing that I really liked about the conversation that I had with Jen too is she's very naturally present. I mean, really. I mean, she was really paying attention and she was doing all the right, nonverbal, paraverbal, nonverbal, paraverbal, and verbal. And I forgot about. Yeah, she was talking. Right, but because I've seen networking events, I love them. I love networking events. I'm generally one of the last people to leave, but a lot of people, it's difficult. But at a networking event, I don't know about you, but sometimes, or even at a party, you can tell someone's kind of, we're talking about, I'm kind of looking around to see who else I want to talk to. That's not good. And number one, number two, you're really not paying attention. It's not good for you, and it's not good with the person because, what does it illustrate? It's always about what does it illustrate. I say to my clients, because I meet with all of my clients face to face, I want to see what it's like to work with you, right? That's really the bottom line. I'm going to be spending time with you 40 hours a week. Am I going to like you? Is it going to be fun? What's it going to be like to work with you, right? Now, hopefully, you're a good communicator, you can solve problems, you've got the skills and everything else, but bottom line, it's about the first 60-second first impression. It really is. So, I hope I made a good first impression in English.
Hold on.
I can you more and more.
That's great. The next part is telling me your steps. I think maybe, Joan, you already have your steps written, like your little recipe about how to, since nobody wanted to come, but this was perfect.
Yeah,
It was like a one-on-one, and you guys did your thing.
Oh,
So
where are they?
If there's,
Oh, here they are. No, they're not.
I can go find, I have
No,
some.
no.
You
They're
have some
back
somewhere.
here.
Is that where it is?
it-
Oh, yeah,
Walking
that's it.
around? Thank
Yeah.
you, sweetheart. Perfect.
I took one
Thank
already.
you very much. Here you go.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch. Yeah, you can just pass them out.
Pass it
Here,
around?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, she had a
And
little
I'll-
recipe,
and
and
I'll
I
speak
think
from this a little
Jen will
bit.
just tell you what her
Right.
steps are.
Right. I'm also a very good cook.
Ah,
Well, my father owned a fast food restaurant growing up, so it's all about customer service.
Is there anything you want to highlight on there? For them?
Well, I can just walk through it. They're questions. They're really questions, okay? But let me, I refer, anybody curious about my toolkit?
Sure.
Okay. One of the things that when I work with my clients, is I require them, as a jump start when I first work with them, there's a book that I ask them to buy, and I tell them to buy a 3-ring notebook and bring it to our first meeting with tabs in it. Okay, there are a lot of tools that we use, right? What's the number one tool we use when we're looking for a job?
Computer.
No, it's actually your resume, right? You can't put the resume in the book. I mean, you can't put the computer in the book. It's your resume, okay? So this is mine, okay? I do a lot of presentations. I pull this out, I put it in my briefcase, and I take it. Everything's in here. Everything's in here. So when you're going to networking meetings, when you're going to interviews, first of all, it creates a little curiosity. You've got everything here, okay? It's not on your phone, it's not on your computer, right? People still do like pieces of paper, right? They do, and you're fiddling around. So I'm old-fashioned, I'm a baby boomer. I still like paper, and I have a MacBook, and I know how to do all that stuff too. So the toolkit has your tools in it. It's got, and I'll show it to you later. But one of the biggest tools, the roadmap, is number one. Are you following an official step-by-step process? action plan. Okay? I mean, I've met with, so I did some volunteer work for a nonprofit, and I met with the president, and he wanted me to join the board. So I said, well, I really need to see your business plan. And he said to me, well, I said, well, can I see the business plan? Well, it's in my head. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. It's in my head? I didn't join the board. But I'm kind of a stickler about that. So, number one, action plan, a written action plan, right? So, this job that I had with this company that I love, we used action plans when we were trying to pitch a client. I still use a similar action plan. Okay, and I really don't have time to get into it. If you want to stay, I'm happy to show it to you. When I do my presentations, I show it to people. I don't give anything away, unless you hire me, I guess, right? But it's not rocket science. It's not like these are big inventions of mine. They're not patented, right? But it just makes sense. But you need a plan. Fail to plan, plan to fail. Step by step. What's your goal? What are the standards, okay? And it starts really with either a self-assessment if you have no idea what you want to do, or you want to validate what you want to do. You need an A+ resume. What comes after the resume? Once you got your resume down, your pitch. Your pitch is embedded in your resume. Okay, on and on. But the action plan is all of these steps, and the action plan has all of these tools in it. Your pitch, your resume, your target list, right? You got it all in the book. Okay, so that's the action plan. Okay, have you created a professional job search toolkit? What's the purpose? Okay, well, I kind of told you what that was. So the contents in here, there are a lot of tools and there are also templates. Do you want to keep writing the same thank you note again? Do you want to keep rewriting the same email? I want to have a networking meeting with you. Things like that. So there are a lot of templates that you can. Do you have a tracking system? I mean, how are you tracking all of these meetings? If your goal is every time you have a networking meeting, and we talked about goals, I want to walk out of that networking meeting with 2 people that this person that I'm networking with, if I'm credible, is going to make an introduction for me, right? Okay, so they make 2 introductions, and then the other 2 people make 2 introductions, and they all start having babies, right? And by the time, you got to start tracking this stuff, right? You have to have a good, you have to be compulsively organized about some of this stuff. So these are all of the things. How are you prepared to conduct an effective meeting? I talked about some of that too. Do you have an agenda? Do you have an agenda? Okay, and I hopefully know where everything is in this book. Here it is. All right. Yep, here it is. Okay. Give this back to me. Somebody stole something of mine last time I did something.
Oh my God.
Okay. I'm not going to pass it around. Come see it. Okay. I don't trust people at all anymore. Somebody stole something from me. I'm traumatized. Okay. But do you have an agenda for your network? It doesn't mean you pull the agenda out, right? And it's not hard and fast, but it starts with choosing. Okay, right? And it's it's got tell your story, ask for help, ask questions. After the meeting, it says thank you, a detailed email and follow-up items. What were some of the things you talked about, right? If someone says they're going to make an introduction for you, one of the first networking meetings I had is through a woman who I worked with. Her husband goes to the gym. I get to know all of these people. And Rick made an introduction for me with a woman who, I'm not even going to tell you who she is, but basically we had breakfast for like an hour and a half. We really hit it off. She gave me 11 contacts that she thought, networking contacts. Okay, 11. Well, impossible. What am I going to, I can't. So what I did is I went back. I went on everybody's LinkedIn site, right? I wrote back to her. And I said to her, I really appreciate it. I Googled all of these people, and can we just start with these 3, right? But I mean, I was like shocked. I mean, I've got pages and pages and pages of notes. She's become a good friend of mine. She was texting me last night at midnight. Oh. And I finally just said to her, go to bed. Okay. So I mean, okay. So yeah. I don't know how I do this stuff. I don't know. You don't want to live with me. You do not want to live with me. Okay, so, all right, the last one, networking. 70% of all jobs are found through networking. I talked about face-to-face versus events. I would give it a go. How do you identify your best networking contacts? Another tool. Here it is, it's a beauty. I didn't do this because I'm not that talented. But for some of you, I'm sure you got your hair covering this thing. Diana, get a haircut? No. I got a haircut yesterday. All right. So anyway, this is a networking map. I actually designed this, and to give you a sense of what it is, if you think about it, it's pretty big. If you think about it, it's like a bullseye, right? So if any of you have ever done archery, when you start to shoot the bow and arrow, or the arrow, you never hit the bullseye, okay? But the idea is, it's also 6 degrees of separation. The idea is you start out here, okay? And these are just categories that help people think about who might I have, a one-on-one networking event, not an event, a networking meeting with, who I think can help me, right? All right? And it categorizes it: family, high school, neighbors, alumni, friends, LinkedIn, but who are the top 5 or top, I tell my clients, pick 3, pick 5, because again, they're all gonna have babies, if you have a good networking meeting, and they're gonna start to get you into, not the perfect job, the right job. The right job. So that kind of answers that question very simply, right? Networking, how do you identify your best networking contacts? You know who they are. You know who they are. It's a little more difficult for Kate, right? Because Kate just moved here from Utah, right? So it's a little more difficult because she doesn't know a lot of people here, but she knows some people here, right? She's been here for a couple of months. You probably have a neighbor, you know some people. She's getting out a lot and meeting people. So, that's the thing. You got to get out. It's very demoralizing if you're applying for jobs online. I mean, you would not believe the statistics. You would not believe the statistics. It's scary. Like hundreds. There are numbers, but the bigger the company, right? Generally speaking, the more people apply for a job. Hundreds. You have no idea how many hundreds and hundreds of people are applying for these jobs, right? And if your resume isn't perfect, they have these software packages that, basically it goes into outer space. I have people that say to me, oh, they never got back to me. Oh, come on. Of course they didn't get back to you. There are hundreds and hundreds of people. 70 to 80% of jobs are found through networking. LinkedIn is a networking tool, okay? It's a networking tool. So, 10 to 15% of jobs are found online. Don't be spending any more than 10 to 15% of your time applying for jobs. Hopefully some of the things that Jen and I suggested tonight, you'll go home and give it a go. Give it a go. So I think that's it. I've got a lot of pet peeves, recommendations, and resources, but we don't have time. So you've got my contact information? Okay. Well,
Thank you.
up.
I know it's good stuff. I like it. Your turn, Jen. Tell
Just
us how to wrap it
a
up.
few thoughts to respect time. As you're networking, definitely go to conferences. Definitely go to events where you're learning. You could do a ton of networking there. Go to charity events. Go to award events. Go places where decision makers are, where people are, but also where you can learn about the culture of the company. Most people, when they go to look for jobs, go to look at the big companies. There are so many small to medium-sized businesses that are unbelievable and growing. I'm not suggesting you go look at the Inc. 5000. However, use LinkedIn and try to find companies that are in the space that you're interested in. Right? There are a lot of unbelievably amazing organizations that you're not going to know off the top of your head ever because they're smaller. But use this to work. You might see them at best family-owned businesses. You might see them at, all of these sort of smaller places, at chambers. So do go out and try to find these organizations. I would also say while you're in the job search, use resources like Catalog for Philanthropy or Volunteer Fairfax if you're in the other side of the planet across the river like me. And try to find nonprofit opportunities to volunteer, to sit on boards. Definitely to significantly volunteer. Joining a board means you have to pay for that, so you may not have a budget for it. But if you don't have a role that's active right now on your resume or on LinkedIn, try to find and create a role. Look at flex professionals, do consulting work, create opportunities. The job search is not about waiting for people to find you. It's about getting out there, creating value for others. And I come up with some crazy ways to do that. But if you have value to offer, find ways to offer it. Hopefully you'll get paid to do it, but sometimes you gotta start out doing volunteer work or other work just to get your foot in the door. So those are probably my last thoughts. I do think if you want to use tools like Meetup or Eventbrite, there's a ton of stuff out there, but just be mindful of your time and what's converting and actually helping you. And celebrate the wins. If you're out doing stuff, celebrate that. If you're waiting to celebrate till you get a job, that could be a long while. I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean give yourself credit for all of the work you're putting in. Take a minute, give each other a shout out. Check off all the awesome things you did this week. Because activity will lead to results. But if you lose momentum and stop doing stuff and expect things to happen, that's not the right strategy. So.
Yeah, I mean, I talked a lot about face-to-face versus networking events, and one of the things that I learned tonight from Jen is creative networking events, right? I mean, the meetups, everybody's looking for a job, right? But, professional organizations, where you can really learn, and if you're looking for a job, you don't necessarily have to join the professional organization.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage some of my clients to actually go, and there's so much in Washington, D.C.
Oh my gosh.
There's so much going on here. I've encouraged some of my clients, all right, so go and talk to the membership people, and they'll let you go to the event, and they're not going to charge you, right? But it's all about, you got to ask.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to be selective about it. One of the things that GW did in their career center where I worked is they had these things called career option sheets to kind of help people think about, where they might network, what are some of the organizations they might work for, what are some of the sample occupations, what's the work setting. This is one of them, but I'm going to pull the one out in particular for Kate, because she's looking for a job in international development, right? So this is similar, but that's the other thing. Some of these things, they start to mention all of these like big name companies. And we all have computers. It's pretty easy to Google and start to find some of this stuff. And if there are small organizations, if you're getting out and you're starting to talk to people, or you're looking at their LinkedIn profile, and you're looking to see where did this person work, who do they know who now works there, maybe they left. These are all of the things where you can really have a thoughtful conversation. But she's got some really out-of-the-box ideas in terms of, more creative networking, more fun networking, where you're going to meet some interesting people that can really help you. But at the same time, you're gonna learn a lot. It's going to get you closer to the bullseye. So.
And don't be afraid to ask for an informational interview, right? When you reach out to someone on LinkedIn and you're asking for a 10-minute phone call to learn more about their department, more about their division, more about the company, because it looks fascinating, and you're in that field, and you just moved back, so for some of you who come back or moved here, that's a perfect entryway, segue to say, yeah, I just moved back to the market, I'm just trying to get a lay of the land. I read that your company is one of the top 10. I'd like to understand what you do, right, and why it's one of the top 10. I'm really curious. Hopefully they will. They don't make stuff. Don't make up stuff. Because they'll be like, "Where'd you read that?" And you'll be like, "I made that up." but don't be afraid to. And I know it's hard because it's afraid to put yourself out there and be told no. But if you're doing an informational interview, you're not asking for a job. You're just trying to learn. Most people, if you ask, are pretty darn helpful and they like helping. Just don't ask for a job, because that's a whole nother level. That puts their reputation on the line too.
Yeah, the help thing is really interesting. Generally, can you help me with something?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's, it's a little role play.
Tell me more.
But the thing is, if you ask somebody for help, pretty unlikely they're gonna say, it's pretty unlikely that they're gonna say no. Okay? At the same time, they may say yes and they're not gonna do anything. But it's a natural reaction. So I think people really need to be more comfortable, asking for help, with the understanding that there's more to it than that. There is a give and take, and I think we both gave you, some good examples of what some of those things are. It doesn't mean you have to do it all the time. I don't think you need to be very, real self-conscious about it. It's not always about keeping score, right? So, yeah, it's really not. People do want to help you, for the most part. Some people say they want to help you and they don't help you. And then I get aggravated.
And the wild whack
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you
And
so much.
There's just, depends on how long you guys want to go. I had like a whole half hour for questions, because I always feel like that's the time when
Yeah,
everybody likes
6
to.
minutes.
We're doing 6 minutes for you, okay,
It
so,
turns into pumpkin at 9 o'clock.
okay,
It was
so.
technically 8:30,
We have, yeah, we would say 44 now, so we can do, we have questions? Thank you, Brad, good to see you.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, so we're doing 6 minutes of questions, okay? That's fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Just, Jen's taking care of it, you guys will raise your hands, go answer, whatever. Yeah.
Can you speak to networking in the workplace to actually, like for example, I just got a contract job at an organization for 2 months and I want to make the most of it. So when I saw that this is going to be about networking in the workplace, I thought, oh, how apropos. So do you have any advice for that?
I do. Because you're only there for 2 months, I'd be very mindful of how much time you're spending networking. But if you set a goal of an hour a week or 2 hours, or every lunch you meet with someone or meet for coffee ahead of work, because you gotta make sure you do your job or they're not gonna ask you back anyways.
Right.
And then I would figure out who are the people that are people of influence, may or may not be in a title position. But reach out and get to know them and just have get to know you at lunch, especially if you're doing work. It should revolve around, I think I need to know you so I can make sure I do the most effective job possible, right? So tie it into the results and then build relationships that way. I'd say have a 100-day plan, but it's a 60-day plan. So I say plan your work and work your plan. Think about doing the people you meet every week. I do think of it in terms of junior, peers, and senior. Because sometimes you don't know who people know, right? Or how they can help you.
Right.
So try to figure out, and even as you start there, say, hey, who are the key stakeholders that I need to make sure I meet to make sure this project exceeds expectations? Can you help me map that out? And people are pretty good about that. Maybe you just ask for an org chart, right?
Right.
Maybe you just ask for what's the meeting structure and cadence and who runs which meetings to make sure you're in the right meetings and the right conversations.
Right.
Those are some thoughts.
What about like the person who I'm replacing? Is it okay to say, hey, can we meet again? No.
It depends on the circumstances of which you're replacing them.
She left to take another job.
So I think it's okay to have a transition meeting. I don't know that.
We've been meeting transitionally all week.
So I think, if I'm going to connect with someone on LinkedIn, I really want to have a good reason why. Right? I really enjoyed our time. I know we were in transition. I wish you the best of luck. I thought it makes sense to connect on LinkedIn. In case you ever need anything, or if there's anybody in my network I can help introduce you to, let me know. Please stay in touch. Best of luck.
So don't ask her in person, just do it on LinkedIn.
I would just do it on LinkedIn. I mean, if she's already left,
No, she's there till tomorrow.
then have that same verbal conversation and send a shorter version on LinkedIn. when you
Okay.
connect with her.
I'll be quick.
Sure.
So we've been talking about the differences between applying for jobs on online boards versus just network, not just network. What about, I don't see those as mutually exclusive, so if I identify an opportunity that's posted, as soon as I see it, if it's a good fit for me, I look for someone who knows someone in the organization, and it has almost worked. I've gotten in the door for an interview, but to ask if I can find someone who knows and trusts me, to say, could you contact someone at this company? I don't have any contacts, just to make sure that I don't get lost in the ATS system. or that I somehow, or that I don't get lost in the HR vortex. Has that been a good, have you seen that work before in your vast experience between the two of you?
I have a super short answer because I would love to hear John. I like your outline, and what I might try as well is to have a person in your organization refer your resume directly, because many companies have a referral program where if you submit a resume and they get hired, you get
Right.
paid. It is more powerful if it comes from someone inside the organization versus you tell them to check to see if it came through. That's my only thought there.
Right, I totally agree. So that would be the goal.
That'd be the best.
Yeah, of asking someone to introduce me to anyone they know at a senior level or, decision-making level at the company where I know there's an opening.
And have them submit.
And have them submit it. But then I'd have to then they'd have to get to know me a little bit more and trust me, unless the referral fee was big enough that they don't really care.
You still have to be vetted, so it's not
Right,
an easy
okay.
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Oopsie, 9 o'clock.
Right, let's do it.
What's the job market like out there? And when you're talking about networking, are you talking about job fairs, or are you just talking about events where you're likely to meet people in your field?
Yes. I mean, it's pretty broad.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of great jobs out there. And it's how do you go about getting them? How do you go about finding them? 40% of jobs aren't advertised. They're not. No. I got hired when I lived in New York when they were having a hiring freeze. Okay, because an organization may have a hiring freeze, but people are leaving the organization and they're getting replaced. Right? You don't know all of that unless you start to dig a little bit. I'm very careful about making a referral. Like, somebody submitted their application, so going into HR or something. I'm just very careful in general about making a referral because you got to be really credible, and I really have to know you well. It's not a loosey-goosey kind of thing. So I'm not comfortable doing that. And I can give you an example. Okay, I have a friend of mine who lives in Florida, and her niece just graduated from law school in Washington, and she wanted help finding an internship or something. So she contacted me and said, but didn't want to meet with me. She wanted me to help her, and I said, well, if I'm going to help you, I don't even know you, so we're going to have to, get together. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, if you're credible, sure, I'm going to help you. And she was like, no, I really don't have time. I said, okay. Okay. So it's the idea of really kind of knowing somebody before you start, making those kinds of introductions, because my reputation and everybody else's reputation is on the line. And I don't really know how much. I mean, I think it works to a degree, where you can maybe get the interview. Getting your foot in the door is a big deal, but actually passing the test, is another one. So, I think I was probably answering the woman's question and left. But did that make sense?
The only thought I would add, now is not the time to be humble in your accomplishments, right? And I'm not saying you should go brag or fluffify or whatever the word is, or exaggerate, but be clear on the value you've made and the impact you've made, and have those metrics and story that you can share. Now is not the time to be demure or shy about your accomplishments. Ageism is alive and well, and you have to own your expertise and experience and help companies understand why when they hire you and you come in, it's going to be rock and roll in no time, because you've got the experience, you've done it, you can make a difference. Right? Because a lot of companies want to hire the young 20-year-old, 25-year-old, pay them a fourth of your rate. So you gotta be very clear on the value you can bring and own that. And if you're not comfortable saying it, that's what you should practice saying out loud. Here's what I can do for you, here's what I've done at past companies, I'd be thrilled to work with you, I'd love to jump in and get started and create and add value right away. Because that is something that typically new people on the job aren't necessarily going to be able to jump in and do. Some can, smaller percentage.
Yeah, I really think it is a lot about research, you know, having all the tools, the resume, the pitch, everything else, but if you don't really research like crazy, you're not going to be prepared. If you don't have an agenda, you're not going to be prepared. The more prepared you are, you're going to be a lot more comfortable, you know? You're going to be a lot more relaxed. And, you know, a lot of it is just about practicing it and doing it again and again and again.
It is like dating.
Huh?
It is like dating.
It is like dating, but you know what? You know, I've had a couple of serious relationships in my day, I guess. And every single one of them has been through people I know. You know, now, you know, I wasn't born with a computer in my crib, and I don't think most of us were. So, you know, that's kind of the way it happened. But, you know, God forbid now, if I had to go, I wouldn't go. I don't think I would go online. I mean, I'm happily married. But, you know, the going online thing, it's like applying for jobs online. I mean, you know, a lot of people, I mean, I know people meet people that way. It's kind of not my thing. And, you know, it's the referral thing. It really is. And I do. It's funny. I do compare it. I compare it to dating.
Yeah.
You know, if my spouse, we were introduced, like, believe it or not, 7 different people knew each of us. We didn't know each other. I mean, is anybody here Jewish? Okay. There's
I like how you were like,
I'm Jewish. No. There's, you know this word. And we actually, I talked to somebody about it. There's a word in Hebrew. It's called beshert. Beshert means meant to be. Okay. So the idea is, it's meant to be. If people are, you would get along,
Well, that's
right?
a good job is meant to be too.
Right. It's got to be the right job. It's got to be the right job. You know, if you don't do your homework and you don't have your criteria and everything else, you're going to be miserable. And 6 months, you're going to be out of it. You know.
can we give Regina a quick round of applause before she goes?
Of course, wonderful. Joan, wonderful. I hope you guys enjoyed this format. I really wanted to be more interactive. These ladies are amazing, as you can already tell. And they have a stand-up routine coming, or is it even better? And they have businesses, you guys go online, stay in touch with them. You know, we can all help each other, okay? And I thank all you guys for coming today. Please give me your orange sheets, give me ideas of what else to do that will be interactive, that you will love.
Thank you.
I can help everybody, okay? So everybody have a great night. Thank you very much. Give me some feedback on what we can do.